So I am here today with Natasha Edmunds. Natasha is a conflict resolution consultant, coach, mediator, facilitator, and community organizer. She helps businesses, organizations, and individuals transform conflict into solutions, strengthen relationships, build cohesive teams, communicate effectively, and find common ground to overcome polarization. She's also a graduating student of the 2024 Dark Woods Grief Tending and Ritual Facilitation training. And today we'll be discussing her personal journey with grief and conflict that brought her to a place of desiring to serve others in this way. And she shares pretty vulnerably and beautifully about her process through the training, as well as the key insights and teachings she received during our time together. So I'm super excited to share this interview with you today, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be in conversation with you today.
Yay. Yeah, so maybe we could start off with I definitely want you to talk about your work and like where it's at now, but maybe even just to start with, if you could tell us a bit about yourself and your work prior to coming into the training, kind of like what you were up to and how that was. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Prior to the training, I was taking some time off, a sort of mini sabbatical, if you will, and taking the time to sort of dream this sort of like collaborative art of like community organizing, interest in grief work, conflict resolution, that I was feeling like there was overlap, there was intersections of it, but I I wasn't quite sure what that looked like. And yeah, particularly that like community organizing thread. I come from working in particularly environmental and social justice nonprofits, and previously developing programs called deep canvassing programs around how to talk to people about hard, big topics like climate change. And for me, in that process, I felt like I was learning or teaching people basic skills in conflict resolution, and that there was a lot of like human emotion around um, these topics that we talk so, factually and, policy based around. And so that work with the environmental nonprofit I was working with, moved me towards learning more about conflict. And yeah, that sort of brings me to, last year it was 5 years working with this organization, and it was ready for me to take some time. And yeah, with that time off was feeling into what all these different parts of what I care about and what I see and feel are like important in this world. What do they mean? And how could I like maybe kind of do them together?
Beautiful. I love that. And I mean, I think I've just been really thinking about this the last couple of weeks, especially how like so many people are turning away from looking at things like climate crisis and other major issues that are happening in the world because of the lack of capacity to be with the feelings around it.
Mm, hmm. Absolutely. And we so often want to like respond with a fact, of like, it looks like this, or it means this way, or someone says something you don't agree with, and you're like, well, actually, the science says this. But ultimately, like, I think what's really going on underneath of that, like under the iceberg, is, fear, anxiety, grief around like life changing, not wanting things to change. And, people are feeling that you know, all across the globe in different ways, across the political spectrum. And that, I think we have a lot more common ground across those spectrums in the more human parts of what we need that are showing up in those
Mhm.
conflicting conversations.
Yeah, totally. No, I really, really agree with you. I've been talking with Jane Spielman, our elder in the community,
Mm-hmm.
and she's the way she says it is she's like focus on feelings and values, feelings and values, and like that being the place where we can find that common ground. And I think it really applies across the board. So yeah,
Hmm.
beautiful. So you were really in this kind of introspective dreaming process and visioning process, and then you came across what I'm up to, I guess, in somewhere in that.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm curious what initially drew you to this particular training, and was there like a specific moment or experience that you were like, I got to do this. This is necessary.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a friend who, um, as I was like leaving that organization and yeah, starting to dream these different pieces, a friend that I was talking to who, has been in their own grief journey and mentioned the dark woods of grief and your work. And so my journey with becoming familiar with dark woods of grief was, through social media. And yeah, I think, maybe there was a big period of time of just sort of feeling into that, absorbing a bit, a bit more information in my own life and learning what Darkwoods offer and just, sort of exploring grief, feeling my own personal grief and family and such. Um, and and yeah, actually, as I had this sort of like dreaming time, I was working through this book called The Artist's Way. Maybe you're, yeah, familiar with. And it really supported me um, to like give myself permission to look at these things as like a collaborative art and that there can be intersections. And so something empowering and about that process perhaps led me to reaching out and when I saw the like grief ritual and tending facilitation program come through, I think that also came at a time where I was like feeling eager for more, just to learn more about
Mm.
different parts of myself and like different skills that I wanted to figure out weaving into. And yeah, I remember like after our first call, um, I had this like feeling of like, oh, this is, it was like the body and the mind conflict or dissonance of like, oh, actually, this feels really right in my body. And then the mind was a bit of like, oh, like, how do I like kind of explain to people like why I'm doing this and why this is important
Uh,
and I remember yeah spending a bit of time with family and like sharing with them that I might be like doing this thing and feeling like I needed to kind of explain myself
mm,
when ultimately I knew that it felt right. It felt like this is work that needs to be done in the world. There's this work I want to figure out how to be a part of, figure out how to weave. And so maybe it was some noticing of like, um, I'm doing this thing, explaining, but actually like I know that it does feel right. And and yeah, so maybe it was just kind of allowing myself to work through that dissonance a little bit. And I mean,
that's
I'm
so powerful.
I'm so
That's so
grateful.
powerful. Oh, yeah. I'm
Mm.
so glad that you were able to, be present with the listening to your body in that.
Mm.
I think that's a really common thing that people go through, is this like with a lot of different things, but like where it's like the mind is like, trying to make sense of it. And it's like, but the body is like clearly guiding us.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
a wisdom
Yeah.
in that that's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe that speaks to, some of the older wisdom of this work. It's like, oh, it actually is in our bodies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I love that you brought up, kind of trying to explain to your family, because that was my next question. I just wanted to ask you about like, and I asked this of everyone, is
Mm.
kind of around like what was the patterning or teachings that you kind of imprinted or received around emotional expression or, grief and trauma processing from, would you say, your family of origin? I mean, we kind of know what they are in our overculture, but we also
Mm-hmm.
have our own unique like microcosms in our family of origins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great question. And um yeah, I mean, it makes me think about this like notion of like intercultural competence, and like a part of that is like becoming more familiar of our origins and their impacts and their teachings and learnings. And I mean, I have, yeah, Ukrainian and Irish and Scottish and English origin, and there's still a lot of those teachings that I'm still feel, sort of disconnected from or not familiar with. But they're there, and you know, I, th- yeah, I mean, I really do give, yeah, some like honoring or credit to my parents who um like my mom is like a deeply emotional person, and I think was a huge part of like building our emotional capacity in us kids. I have two other, siblings and three step siblings.
Okay.
But there's three of us blood siblings. And then my father, is someone who really like, yeah, creates space or sort of like flourishes around um going into deeper, maybe philosophical conversations. And my parents, they they separated when I was in middle school. Um and yeah, and in thinking about, your question, I also think about that time because it was such an emotional time for all of us. And in reflecting on it, like, could, see how each parent individually, like, were pretty open about, the emotional process they were going through. And so maybe there's part of that experience that has continued to like give me permission and being able to access those hard things and like talk about it. And that, they're like when rupture happens, um, there can be a path forward,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow, that's so powerful. I love hearing like, because I think a lot of the time, there's so many of us, like I identify more with like the folks who come from like a family of origin where there's a lot of kind of trauma and things aren't held well. And then like our gifts come out of being like, hey, that's how not to do it. And like then we're like
Mm-hmm,
this commitment
mm-hmm.
to doing it better. I mean, of course, there's gifts of like things that were done well as well. And I think every situation, even if they're like tiny. But I just love hearing about, the health, and the health that you've inherited through,
Mm-hmm.
both of your parents. And, I'm sure nobody's perfect, but like to hear about the, the capacity that they did have and that, I really see that in you, that, and obviously it comes through in your work, that like willingness to go to the depth um, in the conversation,
Yeah.
with the conflict facilitation work alone. I mean, that's,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be willing to go to the depths to be willing to broach that type of work.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. 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 I mean, I do. Yeah. I feel really grateful in and like privileged in having um yeah, some pillars that, life isn't perfect, family isn't perfect. Certainly experienced some hard things in middle school outside of, parent separation, my own bullying and pieces, but having those pillars, I think, yeah, as you've named, has has been supportive. Yeah, I'm
mm,
grateful for that. Hmm.
beautiful. Yeah, and you mentioned bullying, which I think a lot of people have experienced that. And I'm curious if like, do you think that having those pillars in your life and that willingness to go to the depth, like, do you think that that helped you in your process of like recovering from that, the negative experiences that you had?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yes, and they happen sort of around the same time.
Right.
And also, in early teens, I think we feel pretty like self-conscious about our own inner experience. Um, so it's like we could be with the separation that was happening, but with my internal experience, it in what I was experiencing at school and such, it took me quite a bit of time to um come to holding some space for that. Um and yeah, I mean, in my 20s, yeah, certainly, throughout my life, there's been a lot of like maybe like willingness to go there with different, therapists or different modalities. And so maybe that willingness does come back to the pillars that I've had. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it must, and also I'm hearing that, yeah, it's like there wasn't the ideal support there at the time when it was happening. Probably your parents were going through their own experiences, and I mean,
And I
obviously.
didn't know how to talk about what I was going through um and yeah, yeah, like complicated at the
Yeah.
time.
And so much going on too, and like you said, that those early teen years are such a vulnerable time. And it's interesting because I think not a lot of people know this, but our brains are actually open for imprinting, like rewiring,
Mm,
when we go through puberty. So it's like when we're the first year and a half of our life, and then when we go through puberty, and then also when we fall in love and when we're pregnant, our brain like really opens up to
mm,
be rewired. And
mm,
so it's, I mean, both a beautiful thing, and also, if we have a negative experience during those times, it can really have like a deeper impact. And so it's both ways. Like if we can really support the environment at that time, it can be really healing,
mm,
but also it can have
mm,
a deeper impact. So I think we
mm,
often think of teenagers as being maybe more grown up or resilient than they are, but it's actually like such a tender time.
mm, mm. That's
Yeah.
so fascinating to hear about those different sort of stages. And when you talk about impact, I mean, I do feel like that time of my life actually was incredibly pivotal and a part of my story in I mean that bullying experience it gave me a lot of compassion for my sister who has a developmental delay and has experienced a lot of bullying in her life. And I think sort of moving on from that experience, maybe building a bit more compassion for my sister's experience, it certainly has like motivated me to be a part of or create spaces where people from different like identities or have different needs or strengths can be included or can be heard or can have some space. And so yeah, that when I reflect on that time, I'm like, oh, like bringing people together around conflict and hard things and common ground, I think it definitely also comes from that time of um, yeah, wanting to create spaces where people can show up as
Mhm.
who they are.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I'm so enjoying just getting to know you more, because
Mm.
like understanding this about your background, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally see that in you, your inclusivity, that it's such a value that you hold and bring into the space when you come in. So that's so nice to learn that. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to share it. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious, like, yeah, because I feel like maybe I got to see some of that unwinding even in the year of the training that we were together. And I'm curious
Mm.
what you would say from your perspective. Like, how did your relationship with grief overall, like say grief and trauma overall, change throughout the training? But even like if you want to be specific about that piece, or maybe there's other pieces. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I I think we had our last call, what, 2 months ago now? And still integrating the depth of the year that we had together. And yeah, I mean, in like pulling on that, that thread of inclusivity and being a part of spaces that harness that. I mean, you know, part of part of what I've learned in the program is like the power of being witnessed in safe community. And the yeah, what it means to create safe community, or what it means to like, for in our day to day to notice who are our safe people and who can we choose to like be witnessed by, and choose to be like included in and brought into. So I think, that is a part of, um, yeah, a part of the understanding of grief and being with hard things is the witnessing. And I brought that into some of my like conflict workshops, is naming that, like, practicing with someone is a part of like being non-judgmentally witnessed, um to, yeah, sort of like build our relational muscles or whatever it may be. And yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about, maybe I'm like veering away from your question a bit now, but I'm also thinking about some of the like core pieces that I've taken away or that were like really foundational for me in that. And I mean, one of them being the concept of like pendulation, and, you know, being able to move in between being with the grief, being with the conflict, and yeah, having safe container witnessing, and then being able to pendulate to resourcing ourselves, the self-care, the community care. I also think about like in my work now, I think about like resourcing ourselves as like practicing our conversations with safe people, and learning boundaries, and yeah, being able to like move back and forth. And that was such a pillar throughout the months, and is certainly something that I bring into like my personal life, my work. Um, and yeah, yeah, that was, yeah, it was really been a very powerful part.
I love it. Yeah, because I mean, the more that I think about and like feel into conflict, it's so vulnerable when you really
Mm,
get to the root of
hmm
it. Um,
hmm
yeah, there's just such a vulnerability when we really get down to the roots, of why the conflict's happening. It's like often to do with such young parts of ourselves, even when
hmm
it's to do with something more global, it's like often the reason we can't resolve things is because of these like tender young parts. Do you see that? I
hmm
mean, I feel like I've seen that in the conflict that I've been a part of.
hmm Absolutely. Yeah. And when I think about like the sort of like iceberg, above the waterline, or the things that we sort of see on the outside of just how someone responds or engages, but then underneath that, underneath the iceberg that's a bit bigger, it's, there's our trauma, our identity, and our our really young parts, that maybe we um don't get a lot of time to tend to. And so maybe that is also, I mean, that is certainly another part of the training that I think was really powerful, is like, maybe grief work brings out all like our youngest and our oldest parts, and having space where all of those could come out. And so whether that was like connecting with yeah, our young inner child, or with ancestry, and those that older wisdom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, and you had a really powerful experience with that at our last retreat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At our last retreat in October, that the month of where the veil is thin. And I really appreciated the what felt like a real welcoming of our ancestors in that space. And yeah, I'm trying to remember, if it was after, Kimber's meditation, of like imagination is intuition, or if it was another night. But yeah, I remember, having a dream of my grandfather, my mom's dad. And we were in my old house, like the house that I grew up in. And I remember like my aunt was there. And there was some knowing of like, oh, like, grandpa has like visited, us before, but he's here to visit you. And I remember like walking up the stairs with him, and then having this like moment of knowing that he was about to leave. And I asked him something. I asked him about like, what do I do? Or like, how do I move forward in life, or something like that. And his response was to trust, to trust. And then he left. And even talking about it now, I can feel the emotion bubbling up in my
Yeah, very
face.
cool.
And like, I really, I remember coming to Circle the next morning and sharing. And I like truly believe that I was, visited by him that night, and that space, that weekend. Um, and yeah, it's made me feel like a little bit, um, I'm taking that trust with me, that wisdom, and it's made me feel a bit like closer to um my grandparents. And since I've come home and built a bit of an altar with both him and my grandma, and then on my other side my nana and my grandpa. And um yeah I think there was magic that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah, that was so powerful. And I mean, I remember it really as it not being just trust, but like trust yourself. Like you've got this kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, I think in the dream, like I wanted him to like tell me what to do or something, but it was really like, Natasha, like trust you. And like, yeah, really like offering that power and wisdom of like, there is something I can act like, maybe I can access that within me, and I need to trust what's there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
so powerful. Beautiful. Yeah, and I'm totally getting chills too, just as we're talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as you get like teary just thinking about this here, I mean, that's a great lead into my next question, which is like, in what ways do you feel that your own capacity to be present with difficult emotions or your grief has expanded?
Mm. Yeah. Um, I mean, maybe along that like line of trust, um, I think what has expanded is like, yeah, when like grief feels present for me or for people that I care about, like really trusting that that needs space and and to like give that space to like be in it, and allow like really allow myself to feel. And I mean, I've always sort of believed that, um but I think even more deeply now, um yeah, like really believe that like building our capacity for grief and conflict builds our capacity for love and liberation. And um that pendulating piece of like being in it and resourcing, I mean, that's continues to be a practice. But I think, yeah, really trusting that that is really important to be with and to allow ourselves personally to be with, to check in with loved ones or community of what it looks like to be in that. And then, um, you know, I'm I'm curious about what it looks like to also work with people or organizations around, yeah, holding a bit of tough space for when we're feeling grief in the workplace and such too. Because I think that is also very real. Um, but yeah, trusting that there's a space for it and needs to be, and that is essential.
Beautiful. And I think like what I'm hearing from you too is like that it's essential, but you also feel a sense of competency in that.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate you naming that for sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, like competency, maybe a bit of like of confidence around like, yeah, I can go here, we can go here, and we can come out of here too. And
Beautiful.
like it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so powerful. It's so powerful
Mm,
to have somebody in the room
mm,
who can hold that piece.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know you're kind of like just starting to step back into your professional work. And I'm curious, like, is there any like specific moments in what you've done, what you've been doing, so far, that you felt like, oh, I'm so glad this has like come in right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the concept of like pendulation is something that I am certainly working with I do like one-on-one conflict coaching with folks, which can be someone comes with a variety of different conflict in their life, um, and or that can be like pre-mediation. I sit with folks one-on-one to support them to like show up in that space. And yeah, that concept of pendulation, I think, has been really important and powerful um to work with folks on like, yeah, being with um the emotional, the harder parts of like what they're experiencing, and then pendulating to resourcing, which I'm thinking about as like, and then, maybe I mentioned a bit of like, yeah, a bit of that like self community care, but also, learning some skills and tools, that's resourcing, practicing and, together, doing some role play together, of, how to move forward in this hard conversation in your life. And then also, resourcing around, um, you know, choosing to be in hard conversation, doesn't mean that we need to choose to be in all the hard conversations. So boundaries,
Uh-huh.
and what does it look like to like honor ourselves and then honor the person or the thing that we are in conflict with, um, And where does an honoring also mean choosing no? So there's yes, choosing yes, and there's also like where are our clear like non-negotiables,
Yeah.
and where can we stretch within our capacity too. So that's yeah, that's and then doing this work more in group spaces is where I want to like move towards and move towards doing a bit more of that like conflict transformation in teams that maybe aren't communicating effectively, aren't feeling autonomy in their roles, needs need deeper leadership. um so right now it's been more of that like one-on-one small group space, but I look forward to doing that more in bigger group
Oh,
organization sort of spaces.
oh, cool. I'm excited to just hear how that ends up looking and feeling as it
Thank you.
evolves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's any other kind of unique skills that you developed this past year that have just you've really feel like, okay, that's in my toolkit now? And
Hmm. Mm. Hmm. I'm thinking about sort of two different things. I mean, on this sort of like conflict thread, I'm thinking about like rupture and repair and like bid for repair. And so, the knowing, the noticing that something hard was experienced, and then the bid for repair is the outreach to, let's come together and let's debrief and let's check in. And, I think inevitably with, grief work and, um, you know, being with people, over a period of time, um, we're with big, hard emotions and feelings. And I think I really saw in our months together the commitment to repair and the commitment to the relationships that we cultivated with each other. Like, as much as we were all there to learn these skills for like what we're going to take into our lives. And, we came from all different places. And so that that work, as much as it was individual, it was collective, and part of that collective was the commitment to the relationships. And I think that is part of grief work, or part of conflict work, is like is the connection and the relationships and where we're choosing to commit our energy into. um so yeah, that commitment to relationship and repair um something I'm certainly taking away and thinking a lot about. And um another part too, so different than that, but connected to some of the conversation we were talking about around um ancestry and our retreat in October. I'm thinking, yeah, a lot about the five Francis Weller's five gates of grief, and how grief, it it is the younger parts of ourselves. It's the things we expected that we didn't receive. It's the ancestral. It can be a loved one. It's that grief actually is it. Um, it's more than just the loss of a loved one that we so often think of grief as. But grief can be experienced and can show up in many different ways in different parts. And so that has been really empowering, as well, to uh, yeah, to learn that and have some like maybe permission of like, oh, right, that's why I've felt that way, or that's why someone I know has felt this way. It's like actually there's grief in a different part that might not, on our societal surface be named that, but it actually is.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. No, I love that. And I love how, yeah, we kind of like, it kind of like really, I mean, it's always been something I've worked with, but it kind of like really opened up in our middle retreat when like this piece around having someone there who is Palestinian and like having this experience and like to
Mm-hmm.
really have the rest of the group understand that, you know, that her grief and like also our grief and like the state of the world, that that's grief, you know, that it's not so
Mm-hmm.
like it's actually grief, you know, and
Yes.
and that it's like another kind of like getting underneath of that sort of thinking mind and
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
ideas about what's right or wrong and just getting to the like values and feelings and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that like the humanitarian grief, I guess, or that um yeah, society grief, genocide grief, um, that we are, yeah, all experiencing or feeling in our bodies in some way. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, like whether
Mm-hmm.
we're aware of it or not, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
we're all connected to that. So yeah, I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
you brought that up. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was definitely a powerful piece. And the depth work as well of the rupture and repair. It's another kind of depth piece, you know, that that, you know, comes through the experience of being in a deep container like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and that, that comes back to that like that collective piece, it's like we, yeah, the collective of the container and the commitment to, the individuals in it, but also the container and the relationships itself and the group grief that we experience together um and the love in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up because I feel like that's really, I mean, and that's really a part of what makes it decolonial, this work too, is the relational nature of it and the commitment to our relationships. Because ultimately, when we're deeply connected as communities, you know, and when we have the capacity to hold conflict, you know, that
Mm,
work is about, then it's like we less easy to kind of control and manipulate from the top down. We're much more empowered from the bottom up. And
yes, yeah. It's like, yeah, the decolonial nature of grief work does really feel like bottom up. It's like it's community organizing in some way. People coming together over shared values, shared experience, or shared care. And like sharing like resources in whether that looks like care or whether that looks like, you know, like consensual touch or like nourishment. Um, yeah, getting closer to deeper parts of ourself, ancestry, our impact in the world. Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly has felt like and continues and will continue to feel like an important part of my decolonizing journey. Hmm.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I'm glad you brought those points up.
Mm. I'm
Yeah.
glad you did too. Yeah.
Yeah, so last couple of questions. Let's see. I'm gonna pick and choose because we let's see. Yeah, what would you say like what has surprised you the most about integrating this work into your life and work?
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. What has surprised me the most? Hmm. Well, I mean, maybe this shouldn't be surprising, or yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about um yeah, last week or the first week of March, I was in Vancouver for a like a facilitators gathering. And it was an incredible space. And near the end of that space, we all went around in circle and shared like what is something that we need and what's something we can offer in terms of support, skills, collaboration, whatever it may be. And I named that, one of the pieces that I could offer is, um, is a grief, the intersection of like grief work in facilitation, spaces. And, the amount of people that came up to me afterwards and were like, oh, like, tell me more about that. Like, I'm curious about that. I do work with kids. Like, how do you, or like with youth, in their teens, like, how could you imagine that looking like in a camp setting? Or, um, someone who, also named like, I'm, been building this workshop and I've been thinking about it integrated. And so maybe it's not surprising, but, maybe the, the like hopeful part or the surprising hopeful part is like, people want this and they're
Yeah.
thinking about it and they don't really they might have some knowing, but yeah, I think it encourages me to um be, I don't know if loud is the right word, but maybe louder about it, of like, oh, this is part of what we can discuss together. um and yeah. Yeah, it's not surprising that people are looking for it, but maybe it has surprised me a little bit.
Totally. No, I know exactly what you mean. It's like it makes sense when you feel into like the state of the world and just like everything that's going on. It makes sense that, and also I think there is somehow a lot more awareness in the collective consciousness around grief right
Hmm.
now, but it does still even surprise me how much like sometimes I feel like I don't even want to tell people what I do because
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
conversation, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna have to then like talk about it a
yeah,
bunch
maybe I've
because
been
I
a bit
just
quiet
know.
about it in that way too.
And I just,
Uh-huh.
it's like everybody wants to know more, because there's such a
Hmm.
need for space, these kind of spaces. And like, I think people,
Hmm.
their bodies, like right away, they're like, oh, that kind of space,
Hmm.
it's a human need. And it's so, missing from Western culture right now. It's like
Hmm.
most traditional cultures had grief tending practices and spaces,
Hmm.
and we miss it, even if we don't know that we miss it, we miss it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and with that like body and collective consciousness, it's like, mm, maybe part of the power of it is like when you name that, it speaks to something in someone that maybe they were aware of or not fully aware of, but they feel it. Um, and they're curious. I think there's often curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
What would you tell someone who's on the fence about participating in the Darkwoods grief tending ritual facilitation training? They're like on the fence and like, yeah, what would you say to them?
Mm,
Mm.
yeah, I would, offer encouragement around, um, listening to like that pull in your body and, are you able, like what is your mind saying? What is your body saying? What is the intersection there? Um, and to give some like space to listen to that and to notice where some of the, I'm thinking of my own experience and feeling in my mind and having dissonance, but realizing there was actually like a deeper pull. And so encouraging folks to listen to that. And hmm, I mean, I think that, also, um, offer encouragement around like reflecting, um, like what does this mean for you in your life? And, um, we had folks in our cohort who participated in, um, from all different walks of life. Some folks who just came in experiencing their own grief and wanted community and support. Some folks who are bringing this into their practice. Some folks who are figuring out what, this work looks like in different spaces. And so maybe what I'm saying there is like, um, there, Yeah, maybe it's okay. Like maybe it's okay if you don't necessarily have a clear idea or path. If you do, great. If you don't, there's space for it. There's
Mhm.
space for it along your path. And um, maybe you're not a therapist, or maybe you're not as much in the healing space. And so you may be wondering, where does this fit? But there is a place for it to fit somewhere in your life. And where is that space? What does that look like? And um, yeah, how, what kind of support does that space need with this
Mhm.
work? Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's so true. It's like that soul pull that we feel in our body, and it's not necessarily always a super clear path. Like sometimes we can only see like the next step ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Like that
Mm-hmm.
body wisdom, guides us towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Things that trust, grandpa's advice.
Yes. Trust yourself. Thank you, Grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. So, before we complete, I'd love if you could if you want to just share like a little bit more explicitly about what you're offering right now, and just, for anybody that might be like, oh, that's actually what I need, is that kind of conflict facilitation
Mm,
support with, the embodied grief work element to it.
mm.
Yeah, do you want to just share a little bit more about that and how people can find you?
Yes, great. Yeah, so I really like work with the notion that conflict shows up in many parts of our life, whether it's in the workplace or in relationship or how we engage with, the world. And it's a core part of the human experience, but it's actually an opportunity to learn how to meaningfully engage and and to, with that deeper engagement, um, the building our capacity to like transform conflict um, into compassionate connections, collaborative solutions with the people, places, and workplace that we really care about. And so, um, yeah, with that, I offer like one-on-one conflict coaching with people. Um, I also facilitate mediation, so that can be, two or more folks. And always mediation is paired with one-on-one conflict coaching prior to. And then
When you say
also,
one-on-one, sorry to interrupt, when you say one-on-one, would that be like I come for a session just with you and we talk about the conflict and I get more skills kind of and orientation?
yeah, great
Yeah.
question. So yeah, that can look like, we can do that online. I can like meet you in your space. So meet folks where they need to be met. And yes, so that looks like building some more skills and tools around how to navigate that conflict in your life. And yeah, like the inner conflict piece, but also the sort of like tangible moving forward in hard conversation, or maybe you're a manager of something, or you're leaving a workplace, or you're trying to figure out how to show up more meaningfully in social justice spaces. These are different, clients that I've had. So yeah, building some skills and tools and having that, sort of non-judgmental witnessing space with me to do that.
Very cool. Yeah.
And then, yeah, the final part is, yeah, working with teams. So whether that's like businesses or organizations, to support people in building their conflict competency skills. That can look like maybe there's a direct conflict that needs some intervention, or maybe it looks like workshops and trainings. You're trying to figure out how to get from A to B. You are in need of building some more tools to strengthen teams and create more effective leadership. And yeah, I am, weaving the work of grief in all of those spaces around like, you know, holding hard feelings in hard conversations. Um, and folks can find me at natashaedmunds.com, or on, yeah, Instagram as well at nat.edmunds.
Amazing. Great. And do you, I think I remember from our conversations previous that you work in the social justice, like nonprofit sector, but you also are willing to go into corporate type situations as well. Is that true? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm curious to, yeah, work with, you know, teams that are, in organizational, in corporate space. Um, yeah, to be able to offer that to different folks and different needs.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an important piece because it's like we can have people who have the skill set of and they like know what they're doing mentally, but if they're struggling emotionally in the workplace and if there's like underlying things that are unresolved, that's going to impact your output. Like how can it not be
Hmm.
positive? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Those um, yeah, like you just said, those like emotional needs. And that's also like a systems conflict. Like what are the agreements, the norms, the sort of containers in space or yeah, in place, I mean, in your workplace that actually might not be working. So that's like part of it as well as like supporting organizations with, or yeah, business spaces with looking at some of those like deeper systems that might not be working.
beautiful. And do you have a vision for your work continuing to evolve like in the next, say, 2 to 5 years, where it's going?
Um, yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think I want to just continue growing the capacity and space to do this kind of work with groups of people. And it's like we learn a lot about ourselves in one-on-one spaces, and we learn a lot when we are in groups. And so yeah, I think in the next, yeah, I think that in the next several years, the vision that I see is, um, yeah, for more, yeah, organizations and businesses and spaces to feel more, um, yeah, competent in working through hard things, in changing things that aren't serving folks, in centering empathetic leadership. And I want to, yeah, support people to get there.
Beautiful. So powerful, so exciting. I just
Mm,
can't wait to see,
mm,
yeah, like what unfolds for you in the coming
mm.
time.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, so grateful for this work being a part of that journey.
Mm, yeah. Is there
Yeah.
any last thing that, maybe something we haven't touched on, or just any last words you want to share with, people who might be thinking about doing the Darkwoods grief tending ritual facilitation training, or just our listeners in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm, thinking about a lot of the things that we've shared around um, the, yeah, the power of the container of like being with hard things, and um, that, yeah, that, being in the cohort together in 2024, um, maybe it can feel scary for folks to imagine doing this work around other folks, but actually that was part of the medicine. That was a big part of the medicine, is doing that with people. Um, and um, yeah, and that there will be, yeah, I think learnings that we don't expect. And to be open to, um, yeah, to be open to that.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think that applies to the training and also the other containers,
Hmm.
grieving together. There's often so much more to the journey than we expect coming in.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
s-
Hmm.
depth and breadth that, our mind can't quite comprehend until we're in it. So just really listen to
Hmm.
that body.
Yes, back to the
Yeah.
body. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with
Mm.
us today and just everything that you shared. It's such a pleasure to almost like I feel like getting to know you on a deeper level after spending a year with you. And now I'm like, oh, all these pieces are falling into place.
Yeah, I so appreciate yeah, having this space with you today and learning, yeah, with you and our incredible, yeah, people last year. And um yeah, I'm really uh excited for this year's um this year's people who join. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josea. Yeah.
So before we close, I want to share an opportunity with those of you who feel called to this work. We're living in a time where grief is all around us, as Natasha and I discussed today. Personal losses, collective trauma, ecological grief, and yet most people have nowhere to bring these feelings. We're carrying this weight alone, and it's crippling. And many of you already know this because you're seeing it in your practices. Your clients are bringing grief that needs more than just one-on-one work. They need ritual, community, and the ancient wisdom that our ancestors once carried. And this is why I created the Dark Woods Grief Tending and Ritual Facilitation training. For those of you who are therapists, coaches, or healing practitioners, this training will transform how you work with clients in 3 powerful ways. First, your depth of presence. Beyond theory, you'll develop the embodied capacity to sit with the darkest, most intense emotions without flinching, without rushing to fix, and without taking it on yourself. This presence alone creates profound healing, and it comes through being supported yourself to be present with your own process. Second, practical structures. You'll learn rituals and frameworks that you can implement immediately. So these aren't abstract concepts, they're step-by-step processes that have been refined over years of work with hundreds of people. Third, energetic protection and health. So many of us in the helping professions end up burning out because we absorb other people's pain or we get overwhelmed or dysregulated, and sometimes we aren't even aware of it. You'll learn sophisticated energetic and somatic practices to maintain your own deep well-being while doing this work. This is an 8-month immersion starting April 22nd, 2025, that includes 3 in-person retreats at Half Moon Haven on the beautiful west coast of British Columbia, 16 online training sessions with myself, as well as we'll probably have a few extra sessions with some amazing guest teachers, uh, weekly grief support group participation where you get to observe and be mentored in to how we work in our groups at Dark Woods of Grief. You also get 6 personal mentoring sessions with me, as well as a comprehensive training manual and online resources. The investment is $6,300 with extended payment plans available. And now, for the first time ever, we also have an online only level 1 training called Roots of Ritual Foundations of Grief Tending. So this is an online only version of the training that we're offering for the first time this year. This training is suited to those who are unable to travel for the in-person retreats to us here on the coast of BC, but are keen to develop your grief tending skills and learn structures and skills for group grief tending work and to build a foundation for ritual work. There will be opportunities to train with us in person in level 2 and 3 in 2020, starting in 2026. And so this online only training is shorter and will run from April 22nd through mid-August and is priced at $2,500 or 5 payments of $500. If you're interested in either of these trainings or just want to find out more and explore if this might be a beautiful next step for you, you can check out darkwoodsofgrief.com/facilitation-training or email us at info@darkwoodsofgrief.com, or you can always message us on any of our social channels, Instagram or Facebook as well. Links and contact info is in the show notes, and I look forward to hearing from those of you who feel called. All right, have a beautiful rest of your day.